Very good evening to you. I'm Aaron Armstrong in the GB newsroom. Emily Hand, a 9-year-old Irish-Israeli girl, is amongst 17 hostages released by Hamas after 50 days in captivity. 13 Israelis, 6 women and 7 children, along with 4 Thai nationals, were carried out of Gaza on board Red Cross vehicles through the Rafah border crossing. The IDF says the released hostages are now in Israel and on their way to hospital, where they'll be reunited with their families. In exchange, 39 Palestinians have been freed from a prison in the West Bank. A source close to the discussions says 33 children and 6 women make up that number. It comes on day 2 of a 4-day pause in fighting. Meanwhile, a 4-year-old girl released on Friday after being held captive by Hamas told her father she dreamed of coming home. Raz Asher, her 2-year-old sister Aviv, and her mother Doron were released and reunited with Yoni Asher on Friday in the first stage of the Israel-Hamas deal. 24 hostages were freed in total yesterday, 13 Israelis and 11 Thai nationals. Doctors say they've been responding well to medical treatment. The Met Police has arrested 18 people during pro-Palestinian protests in London. 5 on suspicion of inciting or distributing material likely to stir up racial hatred, and 2 on suspicion of supporting a prescribed terrorist organisation. The arrest took place as tens of thousands of people marched through central London calling for a ceasefire. Police handed out leaflets to provide absolute clarity on what will be deemed an offence. The former police officer convicted of murdering George Floyd needed life-saving treatment after he was stabbed at a prison in Arizona. Derek Chauvin survived the attack by another inmate but was rushed to hospital and has been left seriously injured. It comes days after the Supreme Court rejected his appeal. The 47-year-old argued he hadn't received a fair trial. Mr. Chauvin is currently serving multiple sentences for George Floyd's death in 2020, which led to widespread protests against police brutality and racism. Well, this is GB News. We're live across the UK. That's it for the moment. Now it is time for headliners.
Hello and welcome to Headliners. I'm Stephen Allen. Joining me tonight are 2 top comedians and our very own migrant crisis. It's Lewis Schaefer and Nicholas DeSantos. Gentlemen, we are surely the best dressed lineup that you get on this gig, isn't it?
Well, speaking for myself...
It doesn't happen to get 3 ties on Headliners nowadays, you know. Yeah. Things have gone a bit down south,
the old
trend-wise.
The standards are slipping.
Well, it was not that they're slipping. They're getting better and better. People, when I first came on the show, I was the only one to wear a tie.
I don't think that's true. I think I've always worn a tie. It hides all the food stains. This is the beauty of a tie, isn't it? Why do we talk about waistcoats also hide your moobs? Anyway.
That's not what a tie is for. A tie is an arrow pointing...
Well, let's move on to take a look at Sunday's front pages. The Sunday Times goes with, they thought they were about to be executed, then freedom. More on that story as we go through the front pages. To the Sunday Mirror, my darling girl is broken, but in one piece. The front page of the Sunday Telegraph says, crack down on charities that host extremists. The Sunday Express, stop small boats, or we're sunk. And the Observer says, hostage deal on course after Hamas delay prompts crisis. To the Daily Star, haunted by a cigar-smoking ghost of Jimmy Savile. And those were your front pages. I guess we're not going to start with the Star, but let's start with the Observer. What are they leading with, Lewis?
Well, the Observer or the Guardian, I don't know why they have 2 different names for the same newspaper, and I don't know why they only publish on Sunday. What are they doing for the rest of the week? But...
it's a tax fiddle. Is that what you're saying?
It could be, or they're lazy. It's just, these are the lazy. They're
observing. The clue's in the title.
Yeah, they're watching. They're watching the week. Anyway, but this is a hostage deal on course after Hamas delay prompts crisis. And this is about how the Qataris and the Egyptians are mediating with the Israelis and the Hamas people to get people out. They've gotten some people out, but there's still 200 people who aren't out. And there was a bit of a delay. And I speaking as if I don't think what Israel is doing is right by doing this. I don't know what benefit, but they're probably under a lot of pressure from international sources.
What are the other options, though? Refusing to take back offered hostages. That would play badly.
It would play badly, but you say, give us back all the hostages or none. And I remember in World War II, Stalin's kid was a soldier, a young kid, whatever. He was captured by the Nazis. And then they called him up and they said to Stalin, do you want your kid back? And he said, no, kill him. And it's a horrible thing.
That might say more about their family. I mean, we don't really know, how well they were getting on at the time.
This is what the Israelis do, which is they give away thousands for a few hostages, which just promotes bad behavior. It promotes aggression.
Nicholas, your take on the story in general, and then also,
Well, I understand, because here we are seeing the difference between two powers or two governments, one of which really cares about human life and its citizens. And no wonder Israelis are continuously called upon to also take care of Palestinian civilians, and I think they do. And again, as Louis was suggesting, the numbers are not balanced. So far more Israelis are released for Hamas. Far fewer Israelis are released or demanded for in exchange for Palestinian prisoners. It all exchanged with Gilad Shalit, an Israeli soldier. A few years ago, he was in captivity for a few years, and eventually he was exchanged for more than 1,000, just one man, more than 1,000 Palestinian prisoners. Now, in this case, it gets, because as we were discussing, it's being done in stages. And towards the latter stages, they've just started with civilians, foreign nationals. When it gets to Israeli soldiers, we will see if Hamas will be willing to get rid of, to let go of those as well or not. And also because they will know that once they've given all the hostages, they're toast.
Yeah.
It's carpet bombing for them.
And something was said that was interesting, was that the Israelis are going into the West Bank and they're arresting everybody in the West, or a lot of people in the West Bank, and then shipping them to the Gaza, which is like, I guess, the East Bank, whatever. And it could go on forever. It's none of my business. It's none of, I mean, I want to say, it's like with children. You have a child, Sometimes you got to have tough love. You got to say, I'm sorry, you can't do what you're going to do, even though it breaks my heart not to let you.
What I like about this is it's a game where we've got about 15 different starts of sentences, and you can fill them in at home. See where you think Lewis was going to go? Let's move on now. Nicholas, what's the front cover of the Sunday Telegraph doing?
Well, one you mentioned was crackdown on charities that host extremists, but the other one our producers have favored is at the bottom of the page. GCHQ investigates cyber attack on royal family hospital. So this is King Edward VII Hospital in London. Apparently, the first port of call for the royal family. It has treated the late Queen Elizabeth in the past, the late Prince Philip, and still royals go to this hospital when they need treatment. And now their data bank has been breached. Another hacking story. GCHQ, which is UK's security agency, primarily in charge of telecommunication and cybersecurity, is investigating. They don't know who is behind it. Russians have had several attacks, according to National Cybersecurity Center. Iranian Islamic Revolutionary Guards have attacked some vulnerabilities, they say, as well. We don't know who is behind this. What we know is that the hospital officials have assured everyone that the royal family's medical data have been saved.
Is that the thing that worries you?
No, what worries me
right.
is that some non-royals are going to probably receive some emails from a Nigerian prince or unsolicited calls from Russians or Iranian Revolutionary Guards.
Yeah, those are going to be safe. But it wasn't that long ago that the NHS was still using Windows XP machines.
Yeah, which is totally uncrackable.
Yeah.
Or is it?
No.
I have to ask you, Steve, what do you think the GCHQ is going to gain by releasing this information? That's the question.
Well, it certainly made me ponder what would be the information released by the royals, and I was imagining, the story of some ancient vase that was accidentally sat upon while cleaning. That's the kind of story you'd want from normally doctors.
From the hospital.
But I don't think we're going to get it. But I know, I'd say you're seeing some sort of nefarious reason to say, watch out.
Why would they even say it? Why would they say, we think there's a breach? You say that afterwards, there's been a breach, we're sorry. You don't go beforehand, there's been a breach. Now people are going to be looking for this breach. Or maybe there is no breach, but they say there's a rumor of a breach. I think this is a non-story.
Oh, there we go. First one of the night.
It's a non-story. Buy my cup.
It's not QVC yet. We're not selling stuff yet. So what are the Sunday Express leading with, Lewis?
Sunday Express is leading with an exclusive polling by We Think. It says, stop small boats or we're sunk. And I couldn't find the data on this. It didn't include it in this article. It's one of those fantastic articles that has a headline, and then you look for the polling data where it says how do they feel about the small boats. The only thing that they say about the small boats is that most people don't think the Rwanda thing is going to be solved. 57% think it's not going to be solved by the boats. It's not going to be solved by sending them to Rwanda. But it also said that people favor tax cuts by 48%. So it says people like tax cuts. But then in an earlier, the article before says that even after all this, Labour is up 3 percentage points and the Tories are down by 1 percentage point. So
even after the tax, imagine how many tax cuts we're going to have to get before an election then.
Yeah.
It's going to be fun times. Nicholas, you're right about the polling data. It's just an opinion snapshot. People always argue about these things. But Rishi's set himself a bit of a problem, hasn't he? He spent ages with his 5 pillars, his 5 priorities. He repeats them. He asks you what he wants for breakfast. He lists them all. And one of them is stop the boats, not reduce the boats, not any. He's given himself a catchphrase that he'll never succeed in.
That's a key concern of the electorate. It's a huge issue. It has become a question of, potentially embarrassing. It's a question of national pride, national sovereignty. I mean, a country, for heaven's sake, is defined by its borders and the capacity to control and protect one's borders. And it was in their manifesto, although Rishi Sunak was not the prime minister or even the prime minister candidate who promised it. And now, to give it even a bigger international dimension, this week we had a new president in Argentina, the eccentric libertarian anti-left Milei, who sent shockwaves. And among other things, he has claimed that Argentina has an unquestionable sovereignty claim to the Falklands. Now, imagine if Rishi doesn't manage to stop these boats, then Mr. Milei might have another go for Falklands, but this time coming through, second-hand dinghies, using second-hand dinghies. And they might have a chance because they've clearly seen that we are unable to stop them. So stop the boats or we're going to be in trouble on multiple fronts.
Okay.
Can I just say that actually, that's actually a brilliant idea. All they got to do is send people over. If Britain can't defend our home island, this home island, how can they defend something that's 5,000 miles away?
When it makes sense to Lewis Schaefer at this time of night, it's always good.
I feel flattered.
And finally, the Daily Star, Nicholas. Good luck with this one.
So it's again my turn to deal with the wacky headline of the day. Now, last week I was here. The Buffins wanted to try to revive mammoths. This one is even scarier. Haunted by cigar-smoking ghosts of Jimmy Savile. So I don't want to make light of this story. It's kind of hard to do it anyway. But this lady who did visit Jimmy Savile as a younger girl, I suppose, has recurrent nightmares of visits by Jimmy Savile. So a bit of a...
She doesn't just think it's dreams. Otherwise, that would be one story. I have nightmares about Jimmy Savile. But she thinks it's actually a ghost because she wakes up and can smell the cigar smoke.
It's a multisensorial nightmare.
Yeah. Or she eats a lot of cheese. One of them is a smoked cheese.
Or it's a health and safety question. So it's not just about maybe she's smelling smoke and it's bad for secondhand smoke. It's horrible.
Check her,
yeah, imagine
boiler.
smelling smoke and waking up thinking it must be Jimmy Savile's ghost. Oh well. So that's the front pages done. Still to come. Nazi symbols and Dutch Trump, but plot twist, not the same story.
Who is it?
We're here for the show. Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie.
Second best.
You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified on playing strip poker with you three.
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays on GB News.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox,
That's right, we want to hear from you,
GB News.
Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
Affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you. Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months. That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
There's only 3 people you can trust in life. Your doctor, your lawyer, and your nana.
I'm not sure.
So join me, Nana Aquia, at 3 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday, where we discuss the biggest topics of the weekend. Be ready for battle. Could you be quiet? What is this?
It's my new teeth.
It's your new teeth. I don't bite. Well, not without a good reason. Always honest, always fun. Every weekend at 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Headliners. I'm Stephen Allen, Lewis Schaefer and Nicholas DeSantos still haven't had better offers, so they're still here. Let's go to the Sun on Sunday, Lewis. And people previously said, what do you have to do to get arrested at these protests? Well, good news.
We found out, yeah. Police line the streets as thousands descend on Capitol in pro-Palestine march as cops arrest a man over Nazi symbol. And that's what, I guess you know, they arrested 2 people for symbol violation. And I'm a free speech libertarian, so I'm not sure that I think they should arrest people for this. I think a lot of the problems that we've gotten into is because we haven't allowed people to express themselves. So there's a lot of suppressed feelings out there. On the other hand, it's horrible stuff. And so there were 2 people arrested, and the parade, there were tens of thousands of people there. I don't know how many people were there. They should give numbers. Are the numbers going up or are they going down? Do you know? I don't know.
The number of people attending these
demonstrations, yeah. Oh, not arrested. The number of people at the pro-Palestine demonstration.
It looks like it, well, I imagine from what I was reading, well, I've not checked this one, peaked at the one that was big and famous, and Suella talked about it.
The Armistice Day.
Yeah.
Right.
Nicholas, your take on this?
Well, it's apparently becoming a weekly appointment. I don't know. I don't think, maybe I disagree with Louis on this. I don't think there's a shortage of pro-Palestinian or anti-Israeli sentiments. We feel them and we hear them all over the place, on the roads, from Hollywood, celebrities, other personalities, Labour MPs and dissidents. And they keep asking for a ceasefire. I mean, have they forgotten Britain is not in charge of the mandate of Palestine anymore? So what are they talking about? Israel has made up its mind. I think if you want a ceasefire, there was a ceasefire from the time Israel left Gaza in 2006, if I'm not wrong, or 16.
Do you not think it's even more laughable that the Labour Party are ripping themselves apart? So it's not even as if it's the UK Prime Minister would be calling for a ceasefire. This is the leader of the opposition might not say it, but as if Netanyahu's going to be like, what's that? We weren't going to do. But the guy who leads the party that's famous for anti-Semitism, what's he said? Oh, let's listen to him.
But the point is, that guy, he doesn't, Starmer, he doesn't care because he's got 42 points versus the Tories at 26 points. So he can actually afford to basically
lose a few,
to lose a few, and that's a lot of few. The Muslim vote for Labour is quite large, and basically that's the position that he's in.
Yeah, and the calculated risk is, would those votes move across to the Conservatives? Unlikely, so you could afford to lose there. Let's move on to the Sunday Telegraph, Nicholas, and more strife for Keir Starmer. We're back where we started.
Yeah, it's well, we were just talking about this. A Labour councillor who quit over backlash against party's Gaza stance wins back seat as independent. So this was Sofia Nagvi from the ward of Plaistow North. It's an East London ward in the council, Newham Council. She was furious when Keir Starmer said he wouldn't ask for a ceasefire or pressure Israel for a ceasefire.
She not also said...
Apparently I didn't listen to this interview on LBC myself, but apparently Keir Starmer has also said, allegedly, that Israel has a right to cut off electricity and water to Gaza. Well, I presume to northern Gaza, because Israel was encouraging or was demanding, advising all inhabitants of northern Gaza to move south because operations started from the north. And I don't recall any other conflict in the world when one of the two belligerent parts is supposed to provide the other side with electricity and water. I mean,
although normally you're not in charge of the electricity and water. It's an unusual circumstance, isn't it?
Well, it is an unusual circumstance, and I think the compromise was telling them to move south because the operation was starting from the north. So again, if we want to put ourselves in Israelis' shoes, what are they supposed to do? Because in a way they have been taken hostage. There is a territory, they have left it, the territory is autonomous, they have voted for Hamas. Even if Israel were to negotiate peace with them, recognize the statehood, they don't recognize Israel. So what are they supposed to do? But to get back to our point, we have Labour councillors leaving, and this is just one of two cases. Maybe Keir Starmer can afford to lose a few, but at the end of the day, they are the cause of their own trouble. Maybe it's not a big trouble right now because Conservatives are so... Yeah, because when you import your own future electors or voters, people who are very diverse and very divergent with you in terms of your values, then you have to pander to them, and then you have to take into consideration their demands. And Labour has a big block of Muslims voting for them, and this thing will only get more pronounced in the future.
I am really upset that Nicholas has a far better grasp of the English language than I do, and it's embarrassing me with pander and all these words.
Upset but not surprised.
Yeah.
We will to move on for time reason because we cover the Keir Starmer thing. Sunday Mirror, Lewis, more on the terrible news of the events in Ireland.
Yeah, these are big news, and it's not on the front page, and this is, I think, the biggest news. A Dublin stabbing suspect who attacked school kids in court on a knife charge 5 years ago. He had a knife, he didn't knife anybody 5 years ago, and this is in Dublin. And they're not saying whether he's a terrorist or not. They do say he comes from Algeria, and they're calling the people who rioted, and you shouldn't riot, obviously, but the interveners are not. Here's the thing, that this is happening around the world. It's the war that's going on. There's 3 wars going on, 2 wars. The first war is this war, is that the people of the local people feel put upon by mass immigrants and, let's say, Team World. This is the home team of Ireland. They feel, what are we, chopped liver living here? This is our country, which is ironic because there are like 5 million Irish people who moved over to America. And the Irish people are one of the largest immigrant groups in the world for a couple of hundred years. I mean, I don't know if they're still one of the largest.
But they moved legally and respecting the country that they host.
You know what a case could be made. I moved and I thought I was respecting the country, but people have had problems.
We all tweet you about that. I mean, it's one of these stories where you can acknowledge that there is nuance. There's bad on both sides. You should protest, you shouldn't riot, but you should talk about the crime of someone who stabbed someone. Don't hide this from them.
Exactly. And if somebody is outraged because they saw little school kids got stabbed, they shouldn't be, hopefully, branded right-wing extremists by the Irish Prime Minister. And the funny thing, if you want to find the funny in this, is that the Irish Prime Minister, Leo Varadkar, reminded the public that, OK, yes, the attacker was a foreigner or originally a foreigner, but people who tried to, neutralize him, some of them were also foreigners. So, it tells you a lot the low expectations of the foreigners. Like, some foreigners actually don't want to see little kids stabbed to death.
But
I've got to move on time-wise. The Observer, Nicholas, and why people are turning to the Dutch Trump, which sounds like a way of breaking wind in bed, but isn't.
No, it is not. They feel they're being neglected. Why voters turn to Dutch Trump, Geert Wilders? Now, the Italian proverb says the Observer here has discovered the hot water. Like, the left or the main parties have neglected their voters. Like when you discover something that is quite obvious. Obviously, especially the left, but also other mainstream parties to a lesser extent, they have betrayed their electorate. They have gone for globalism. The leftist parties who used to defend the workers' rights, they went for critical race theory and intersectionality and feminism and LGBT, and a lot of people feel disenfranchised. I mean, these are all, whether you talk about Italy or France or Germany or Britain, it's all the same. Or Ireland, except that sometimes you have a party like Geert Wilders who has been there holding the trenches constantly at 10 to 15 to 20%, okay? And in some countries like the UK, we don't have that kind of party. We have UKIP, who is maybe strong enough to get us a referendum, but not all the time. And then there's, ups and downs. So now, Geert Wilders is the surprise of the week, together with Milei of Argentina. The question is whether he will be able to get enough coalition partners to reach that magical number of 50% plus one.
Oh, that, Lewis, reading the article, already, as soon as there was a whiff of the chance of being involved in some sort of power, all of a sudden things started to become a bit more moderate. He actually said the policies they had about trying to ban mosques, that's gone, don't worry about that. So maybe he's become milder.
Well, I think because of the political system there, I'm not so sure, and I'm really offended by how correctly he pronounces, or I think correctly you pronounce the guy's name, which is basically, that language is unpronounceable,
Anyway, back to the story.
is because of their political system, which is not first past the post, as it is in this country, okay, then they have to make a deal with each other, like the way it used to be in Italy, where you had, in order to form a government, you had to get other parts.
Yeah, so it still is, yeah.
So he's basically saying to the other potential coalition partners, join us, we won't be as bad as you think we are. And that's what he has to do. Am I right about that?
Yeah, they have to prioritize their policies to get at least one coalition partner.
Yeah.
Get consensus that represents the nation, maybe.
Because it's not a parliamentary system.
Let's crack on to the Observer, Lewis, and people on the internet are saying worrying things about vaccines. How long each day do you spend posting your thoughts on Facebook?
I used to spend a lot of time, and then I stopped because I just thought people were hating on me. It was one of the reasons why they hated on me. And no, avoid them all. That's what somebody wrote on that's the headline, but somebody wrote that in a website. Anti-vaccine conspiracies spread as UK cases of measles increase. And this is a very long article by the Observer, basically saying that anybody who questions vaccines and the medical narrative are not well educated.
Quick question: do you like the idea of a measles vaccine?
The answer is it's not my place.
It's your place to express your opinion about your thoughts. Don't tell other people.
My thought is the answer is I don't even believe in the measles virus. Okay. So I wouldn't take, if I had my kids today, I would not get them. I would ask my wife not to vaccinate.
Nicholas, I interviewed a doctor once who said the problem is people are no longer, we're 2 generations away from people being related to relatives who died or went blind due to measles, and that's why we don't think about it anymore.
Well, I'd say people are growing, especially parents, growing skeptical over vaccines. I say, whose fault is that? Whose fault is that? For 2 years, they imposed a lockdown on us. First, they said billions of people are going to die. Then they said, take 2 doses, you'll have Christmas. Then they said, no,
It was happening before COVID, though.
It was happening, but now we have quite a bit of proof. You know, vaccine, with COVID, they discredited other vaccines, like more legitimate vaccines, if you like, as well. To quote one of my favorite comedians, Alistair Williams, he says, yeah, my uncle has had COVID 15 times, and every time he says, oh, thank God for that vaccine. Phew, if I hadn't had that vaccine, you know, the vaccine that they give you in car parks and then does nothing, it doesn't stop you from transmitting it, doesn't stop you from catching it. So,
But his belief, you should question, don't you have to, like, put balance?
No, because we're about 3 minutes over. If we could speed up, then we'd question. We're past the halfway point, so it is technically quicker to watch to the end than go to all the way back. Still to come, misogyny and a lack of respect for authority. Yep, Lewis is staying with us, but there'll also be stories about that. We'll see you shortly.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
There's only 3 people you can trust in life: your doctor, your lawyer, and your nana.
I'm not sure.
So join me, Nana Aquare, at 3 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday, where we discuss the biggest topics of the weekend. Be ready for battle.
Could you be quiet? What is this? It's my new teeth. It's your new teeth.
I don't bite. Well, not without a good reason. Always honest, always fun. Every weekend at 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News,
the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Who is it? We're here for the show. Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie. Second best. You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these 3.
Oh! No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays on GB News.
Welcome back to Headliners. To the Independent, Nicholas, and Starmer is going to protect women from violence. Insert Thai joke about him not knowing what one is. I think we're meant to fill that in. What have you got for us?
Starmer's personal mission to tackle violence against women and girls for his daughter. Now, Starmer has made this a personal issue by mentioning his teenage daughter who's going through high school. He wants He says he wants her to live in a safer society, feel safe, going heavily after the conservative government for not having done enough in the 13 years they have been in power, depleting police forces. A lot of criminals are repeat criminals, which is the same all over the world, let's face it. Criminals tend to be repeat criminals. But interestingly, at the same time, the Prime Minister also, Rishi Sunak, has also a daughter of a similar age and has made similar promises or expressed similar desires, and at the same time has refused to tell whether or not his daughter would trust the police, because we know there have been surveys coming out with damning conclusions about misogyny and certain, cultures or beliefs or attitudes in the Met Police. Now, I have my own reservations, because we know nowadays in the society there's a lot of man-bashing, a lot of man-hating, toxic masculinity, from England national team to some razor-making corporations. They've all gone after men. Men are bad, men are evil. There's a rape culture on campus, and this is both in the UK and the US. So it's all fine and well when we really tackle crime or abusive behavior. But I have my doubts when we go with hashtags like "Believe every woman." I just don't want the witch hunt against men when it comes to
the idea is to have some lessons that are taught to young boys at school. Lewis, that means also that the women will be free to have another lesson, and then maybe you can come up with a syllabus about maybe whatever advice you would give to young women. Actually, let's not ask that question. Let's get back to the story.
Well, it's interesting because the women won't have a syllabus. I mean, it'll just be the men. This is men hating, and the schools. I've been to school, and I know we never listen to our teachers. So if you can have a module on how bad men are and that they should be nicer and ask for consent or whatever, men aren't going to listen to it anyway. And the thing is that this is a weird time, because I have my two sons, and they don't pay that much attention to women.
Look, there's a point that they make in the story about there's a void that's been left, which is being filled by people thinking, oh, I should act like Andrew Tate tells me to act. That hole's there, and if you can fill it a different way, then there's no reason to have toxicity and masculinity synonymous.
No, because in schools, the school is not the place to teach anybody anything.
Well, that's the end of that then. To The Observer, Lewis, and if you're poor, old and lonely in the Northwest, good news, you'll make the king even richer when you die.
Yeah, this is a shocking thing. The king's estate, the king, which is, we used to have a queen, and they used to be a queen. King's
Thanks
estate
for the recap.
to transfer £100 million into ethical funds after bona vacantia.
What?
I don't know if
you say that on TV. Can we just check?
Bona vacantia. How do you... Nicholas, you know everything.
Yeah, in Latin it would be vacantia.
Vacantia. Bona vacantia. Actually, we don't know how things were pronounced in Latin.
Anyway, can we get back on the story?
Anyway, this was amazing, is that if you die in the Northwest and you don't have a will, you don't have any family members, the money goes to the king. It goes to the king. And that's why he wants to, and he's been saying, what have you been spending this money on? To renovate his houses, to make more money. This king, it makes Bill Gates look like he's not interested in money.
Maybe more of that later. Are you shocked by this? It also happens down in Cornwall to a different duchy.
I think we are both shocked as non-Englishmen and commoners, if I may say that.
As an Englishman, they don't mention it to you often. I didn't know about this.
Okay, it's good to know that you are in company, because obviously you are more sophisticated in that regard. But yeah, this is a double whammy, because on the one hand, this thing has come out thanks to a Guardian investigation. For once, the Guardian has done something useful. It doesn't happen every day. Something described as an archaic hangover from the medieval times, a bizarre remnant of feudal Britain. So basically, if you die in the Northwest and you have no will or no next of kin, your patrimony, your property, your money goes to the king and not to the state. And the second aspect of the double whammy is that the money often, as Lewis was saying, is not exactly spent by these charities on those areas that the king himself so fervently has advocated for. The Guardian
or
asked...
where the money is coming from. right?
Well, the dead people. We know where the money
we know where it
I don't
comes
think they make
from,
money on the stock market.
but The Guardian couldn't get an answer as to whether these charities run by the Duchy of Lancaster were investing, for example, in mining. Not that I think there's anything wrong with it, but in mining, in tobacco, and in other industries that are not really, in line with the desires and with the passions of the king.
And he mentioned something, what you said, an archaic hangover from the medieval times, right out of the feudal era, which I would say has to do with everything that the royal family is involved.
Wanted to turn back the clock to the good old days. Looks like we did. The Sunday Telegraph, Nicholas, and yet again, it is the 6% of people who go to private school who are the real victims here.
Well, I wouldn't go as far as that. Let's read the title first. The Crown damages private schools with its frustrating stereotyping, says education chief. Now, this is Julie Robinson, or Mrs. Robinson, as mentioned in the article as well, chief executive of the Independent Schools Council. She says the very famous Netflix series, The Crown, basically propagates this stereotype whereby people who send their kids to these schools are very rich and very wealthy. And I don't see what's wrong with that. I wish I could send my kids to a £50,000 a year school, but maybe if I get more headlinerships or sell more mugs. But the point is that she says people shouldn't feel like there is some poshness attached to it, or feel shy about it, or be labeled in such and such way, and I agree with all that. And let's not forget that some people are not extremely wealthy, but they still get help from their parents. They manage to scrape up this money and send their kids to independent schools. They're not all Eton, they're not all super.
Yeah, but if it's only 6% of pupils who go to these fee-paying schools, then it can't be a big chunk of that, the scraping by, there'll be a strata of the scraping by, and all the ones above that find it an absolute walk in the park.
Yeah, well, this is, at the end of the day, or as I like to say, when the chickens have all been plucked, is that these private schools are doing a service because that 6% of the kids who don't have to go to public school.
And the amount of bullying that would happen if they went to state school, it would take up a lot of time.
And it's totally ridiculous to think of The Crown, the actual TV show Crown. For the people out there who know my oeuvre, I was the Canadian Prime Minister in an episode of The Crown, and I played an American news reporter interviewing Prince Philip, right? Prince Philip. And I don't think anybody looks to The Crown for information about anything.
They don't now. We know that you're in it. To the Sunday Telegraph, Lewis. And civil servants had meetings about a book that said why I don't talk to white people about race, but I bet they did.
But I bet they did, and they wanted it kept secret. And it says this is secret civil servants in the Department of Business and Trade. And what makes this thing interesting is they were speaking to their quote-unquote REACH network, which is a group representing minority people, right? And it's Kemi Badenoch's department, and she's been gung-ho against critical race theory and not teaching all this stuff. And it was her department that had these secret meetings to promote this Chazarah, as we would say.
Nicholas, your thoughts? Have you ever been to one of these?
No, thankfully not. I mean, these people have got to get. To be fair to Kemi Badenoch, it's her department, but obviously she doesn't have control over all aspects of it. But the irony is that these people get together and talk to each other about how oppressed they are, or how their race gets in the way of getting promotions, while their department, their ministry, is headed by a black woman. So, and I myself, as the only non-Anglo-Saxon member of the roster of headliners, I can tell people if you try hard, you will get there, and race and background will not be an obstacle. So we just need to get going and forget about critical race theory.
You try hard, you can get right here to the middle. One more section to go, so you've nearly done it. We'll be talking about Bill Gates making the world worse and some turkeys having a gobble. And it will make sense, I promise. We'll see you shortly.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox,
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you. Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months. That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Headliners. The Mail on Sunday, Lewis. People think that Bill Gates is an eco-nutter putting chips in all of us. Meanwhile, Elon Musk actually makes electric cars and Neuralink, but whatever. What's Bill Gates been up to?
Bill Gates' reputation as the world's most noble philanthropist is Bill Gates' reputation as the world's most noble philanthropist about to be torn to shreds by a new book which claims his billions do more harm than good? And the answer to that question is, it's been torn already. I mean, the guy, yeah. I mean, what else can you say about that?
In the article, it accuses the philanthropist of philandering, and that is, I mean, he's almost on brand. Do you know what I mean?
Word philand with the Philistines. Do I have to say this? I think the people know. They know there is something wrong with the guy. You can't be a philanthropist and try to make money. You can't do both. And that's what he's tried to do. He made money out of the COVID vaccine. He's making money on the farmland. He's made money on that fake meat.
Well, but in the article, I think a lot of it just says he's got so much power. Of course he has lots of power. He's a billionaire. We've got a system where people can accrue enough money to become a billionaire with power.
Forget about the power. Think about what he stands for. And what he stands for is, he stands for making money while pretending to be a great guy. If he didn't make any money, you could say, well, maybe he's not doing it for the money, and you'd give him
If he didn't make any money, he wouldn't be a billionaire, and we wouldn't be talking about him right now. Tricky. Nicholas, your thoughts?
Yeah. Well, he has made a lot of money and no harm necessarily in that. The book, however, so many accusations, and one of them is that actually even conceding that maybe his heart is in the right place and he actually means to do some good, he's not using his power in the right way because he wants to play God, according to the book by Tim Schwab, by the way. who is a Washington, D.C. journalist and won prizes as well, a prize-winning journalist. But he says Bill Gates, for example, in case of Pakistan, he picks a disease like polio, which is not even fatal, and then tries to strong-arm different governments to do things his way, to go after polio like the Pakistani government. So they come and fill up the fridges in all these clinics and local provincial hospitals with polio vaccines, which are sometimes unneeded, and at the same time, more fatal, more dangerous diseases go unnoticed or neglected.
The article mentions one of the vaccines that are displaced is measles, which means you've just agreed with someone who likes measles vaccines.
I will say this. He doesn't like me. With him,
No, the book says the problem with having so many polio vaccines, you don't get enough measles ones.
As Ben Shapiro says, you can believe in two opposite things at the same
couldn't
time.
get you to agree with it. The Daily Star Sunday, Nicholas, and maybe turkeys would vote for Christmas if the meat changed.
This is a funny story. PETA embarrassed after bizarre turkeys wouldn't eat us for dinner claim proves to be false. So basically PETA, very well-known pro-vegan anti-animal cruelty organization. They made this post on social media, on X to be precise, in which we see a picture of turkeys dressed as humans trying to eat a human for dinner. And PETA says, well, if turkeys don't ever do that, why should we do that to them? And then this claim has been community noted. One of those famous community notes has come underneath it saying that, no, actually turkeys are not vegan. They do eat mice, frogs, and had they been bigger, they would have probably eaten us as well. And they have even backed it by some research done at the University of California. So basically, PETA has had to backtrack, and they have become subject to ridicule. Some people have gone as far as calling it best community note ever. And also, they've asked, does PETA ever talk about all the birds killed by wind turbines, for example? So, long story short, PETA has fallen victim to the famous community notes.
Yeah, they're the people for the ethical treatment of animals, not the people for the good research about what turkeys eat.
Well, who was their spokesperson? That not Beverly Johnson, the other what's her name? The supermodel. This is, what do they call this? Mission creep, where they started out by saying, listen, maybe we shouldn't be wearing fur coats and we should save the animals there. And now suddenly it's telling us we can't eat turkey. And I think eventually it's going to be bye-bye PETA. They did some good work. I don't think we should wear fur coats.
Do you know the first group that ever had an Ofcom complaint about me when I did a radio show was People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals. So we got history.
Yeah.
To the Sun on Sunday, Lewis, and why we might not know if there's any aliens around. Could it be aliens causing it? That's internet logic for you.
Yeah, the UFO means we don't know what it is. As soon as it becomes a UFO means unidentified. As soon as it becomes an IFO, and then it's no longer a UFO. UFO case dubbed UK's Roswell, which is that place in New Mexico where there was something happening over there, blown open by new evidence as expert reveals how aliens could be behind baffling mystery, because this took place in the village in Wales and in 1983, and they've just done research and they found out that there's no obvious conclusion. So at that point, I stopped reading.
Yeah, Nicholas, the word "could" is doing a lot of heavy lifting here. It could be aliens.
Well, some people. I think it was Ben Shapiro again to give credit where credit is due. I think it was him who said, "Well, surprisingly, all these UFO sightings, nobody ever has a phone or a phone camera on them nowadays.
Yeah.
How is that possible? All these sightings and not a single photographic proof."
Yeah, there's less now than there was in the 1950s.
Yeah, we see people getting happy slapped all the time, but no one bothers to film an alien.
I love working with Nicholas DeSanto.
Likewise.
To the Daily Star, Nicholas, and the Earth's axis could be tilting. Half of the planet will say it's to the right, half to the left, so it's just like everything else these days.
Fascinating scientific story. Dangerously hot summers on the cards as Earth's axis appears to be tilting. So the Earth axis, the rotational axis, is tilting, and what that means is more severe weather, hotter summers and colder winters. Previously, scientists believed that maybe the reason reason was global warming or the melting of the ice caps. But apparently now they say the major reason is groundwater extraction for agricultural purposes. So if this trend continues, as I said, we'll have more extreme weathers on both sides of the year, and that means it's more difficult for the glaciers, for the ice caps to basically endure the season, the hot season, up to the next year, to be able to renovate, basically recover what was melted.
Lewis, I'll start the stopwatch. How long until you mention Velikovsky?
Velikovsky. You have to mention him in the beginning. All the different planets are in a different tilt. They're in a different tilt because they were put in position. There's no way that the mainstream people can explain why every single planet is different. Even I think Uranus is upside down bending.
Because you understand all about conservation of angular momentum.
Exactly, because it came into the position that it was in, and it was kind of locked in place. At the end of the day, I don't know anything about the tilt. I know that the planets are bouncing around up there. Believe it or not, every planet has kind of like an exosphere of energy, and if it runs through another planet, it can mess up that planet. And it could affect the tilt.
Well, and then you can tell me what my horoscope is in a minute. Well, the show is nearly over, so let's take another quick look at Sunday's front pages. The Sunday Times goes with, they thought they were about to be executed, then freedom. The Sunday Mirror, my darling girl is broken, but in one piece. The Sunday Telegraph, crack down on charities that host extremists. The Sunday Express goes with stop small boats, all were sunk. And the Observer, hostage deal on course after Hamas delay prompts crisis. The Daily Star Sunday, haunted by cigar-smoking ghost of Jimmy Savile. Those are your front pages. That's all we've got time for. Thank you to my guests, Lewis Schaefer and Nicholas DeSanto. Leo Kurz will be here tomorrow at 11 p.m. with Cressida Wetton and Nick Dixon. If you're watching at 5 a.m, stay tuned for breakfast, and we'll see you again next time.
I like you, Steve.
Who is it? We're here for the show. Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie. Second best. You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
Oh! No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays on GB News.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affects us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you. Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months. That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
There's only 3 people you can trust in life: your doctor, your lawyer, and your nana.
I'm not sure.
So join me, Nana Acquia, at 3 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday, where we discuss the biggest topics of the weekend. Be ready for battle.
Could you be quiet? What is this? It's my new teeth.
It's your new teeth. I don't bite. Well, not without a good reason. Always honest, always fun. Every weekend at 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's Saturday night and this is the Saturday 5. I'm Darren Grimes, along with Albie Ammon-Corner, Benjamin Butterworth, Connor Tomlinson and a new voice on the show, the brilliant Lois McClatchy-Miller. Tonight on the show, the 2016 revolt ain't over yet.
Time to end the scourge of anti-Semitism.
Mass migration is a betrayal of British people.
Why do Gen Z want to ban the Bible?
And why Britain needs to get building no matter what the moaners say.
It's 7 p.m. and this is the Saturday 5. Welcome to the Saturday 5, the very best Saturday night takeaway that you could possibly order. Expect fiery debate, spicy opinions and a huge topping of fun. Every week, join Albie, Benjamin and myself, along with guest stars. Tonight, it's Connor Tomlinson and Lois McClatchy-Miller. The premise of the show is simple. Each host gets 60 seconds or so to outline their argument about a chosen topic, and then we'll all pile in and the fur starts to fly. And of course, we want to know your views as well. Get in touch by emailing gbviews@gbnews.com. But before we start tearing each other apart, it's your Saturday night news with Aaron.
Hello there, very good evening to you. Aaron Armstrong here with your latest headlines from the GB newsroom. The delay to the second release of hostages held by Hamas may have been resolved following intervention by Egypt and Qatar. That's the latest report from the Reuters news agency. Now, earlier, Hamas accused Israel of violating the terms of the truce agreement. It said Israel was not letting aid trucks into northern Gaza. So Hamas called a halt to proceedings. But now we understand that 13 people will be freed from captivity in Gaza. At some point tonight, they'll be handed over to the Red Crescent. Egyptian authorities are waiting, though, right there at the picture you can see now at the Rafah border crossing, for the transfer of those hostages to take place. Now, in return, Israel's agreed to release 39 Palestinian prisoners from the West Bank. That's part of the deal brokered by Qatar. It is the second of a 4-day pause in fighting. And the delay, well, we don't know how long now it will take, but we will keep an eye on it and bring you the latest as soon as we get it here at GB News. Meanwhile, a 4-year-old girl released yesterday after being held captive by Hamas has told her father she dreamed of coming home. Raz Asher, her 2-year-old sister Aviv and her mother Doron were reunited with Yoni Asher, the 4-year-old's father, on Friday. That was the first stage of the Israel-Hamas hostage deal. 24 people were released, a number of them taken to Schneider Children's Hospital, where authorities say they've been responding well to medical treatment. Meanwhile, police have arrested 2 people on suspicion of supporting a proscribed terrorist organisation. Officers took the action as tens of thousands of people demonstrated at a pro-Palestine march in central London. Police say one suspect was seen in Trafalgar Square wearing a green headband with white Arabic script on it. He had several more in his possession. Another protester was earlier arrested on suspicion of inciting racial hatred. He was seen carrying a placard with Nazi symbols on it. The former police officer convicted of murdering George Floyd has been stabbed at a prison in Arizona. That's according to reports in the United States. It's understood Derek Chauvin survived the attack by another inmate on Friday, but has been seriously injured. It comes days after the Supreme Court rejected his appeal. The 47-year-old argued he did not receive a fair trial. Mr. Chauvin is currently serving multiple sentences for George Floyd's death in 2020, which led to widespread protests against police brutality and racism. And tonight's expected to be the coldest of the autumn season so far, with sub-zero temperatures across large parts of the country. It comes after many areas experienced their first frost of the year. Temperatures were well below freezing. Across north-western England and in the south, temperatures could dip to -7. Rural parts of Wales, well, it could be somewhere around the region of -4. The Met Office also says snow could well fall next week. Well, this is GB News. We're on TV, digital radio and on your smart speaker too. That's it from me for the moment. Now it's over to the Saturday 5.
It's Saturday night and you're with the Saturday 5. It might be cold outside, folks, but I tell you what, it's not going to bite as much as it will in this studio. I can promise you're in for a very lively hour. Let's crack on with tonight's first debate. Kicking us off with his take on this week's record immigration figures, it's Connor Tomlinson. Take it away, Connor.
Yeah, new ONS figures show a record net migration number of 672,000 people entering the UK this year. That's about 1.2 million legal, plus about 30,000 boat migrants who broke into the country. The UK has seen more immigration in the last 25 years than between the Norman conquest of 1066 and the Second World War. Now, you can't just blame Hong Kong and Ukraine for this, because 10% of humanitarian visas have been knocked off the total in the last year. About 250,000 of these are new Indian arrivals. Last I checked, a country that wasn't at war. So why isn't the government willing to reduce numbers when the British public has voted for that in every election for the last decade? It's because they're committed at all costs to seeing the GDP line grow up. How do you grow an economy? You either grow productivity or you grow the population. Well, since the 1990s, productivity has stagnated and net zero is ensuring that all of our energy bills keep going up. So that's clearly not the plan. The problem is nobody's having babies. The demographic pyramid is inverting. Britain's birth rate is below 1.5 children per woman. Replacement rate is 2.1. We saw 200,000 fewer births than people turning 50 last year. We're going to reach a 50% retiree to worker ratio. Without importing low-wage workers, there's going to be nobody staffing institutional care. So the plan seems to be battery farm everyone from everywhere until, according to a recent ARC report, the UK becomes 54% first-generation immigrant by 2083. Are all young people too selfish or frightened by climate change to have kids? Well, though 50% of women in the UK reach 30 without any children, 92% when polled by the new Social Covenant unit said that actually they want them. It's just economic pressures and anxieties about the future that are causing them to delay. And if things don't change, by 2050, 800 million people are going to have wanted to have children but never have them. Now, why do I bring this up? Immigration is contributing to low birth rates. To have a family, you need a house. And Migration Watch found that by 2046, you're going to need to build 18 new cities the size of Birmingham just to accommodate for new migrant arrivals. We just can't keep pace with the rate of change. Personal tragedy and economic catastrophe is going to await us if this goes on. And beyond material arguments, a sense of belonging is necessary. It matters. People don't want to bring children in a civilization that they don't recognise. When the world on your doorstep is changing at a dizzying rate, it is against our wishes. We didn't move, but our country looks like somewhere else. And unlike the new arrivals, British people have no other home to go to. This can't go on. People polling found 53% of the British public want a 5-year moratorium on all migration. So, less migrants, more babies, and a Britain that the native population can believe in again.
Well, Connor, I'm afraid to say that you look somewhat short on this panel, but I think it's, for the most part, it's absolutely right that we're not having enough babies, and everything he said there, even you couldn't possibly disagree with.
I mean, I know I put some weight on, but I'm not having a baby.
I did think that was maternity clothing, Benjamin.
Yeah, I'm dressed like a jockey. But look, the point I'd make is that I think there's a real level of dishonesty about the government at the moment, because we've had these figures. First of all, I'd point out, when David Cameron came into office, he said we'll get immigration to the tens of thousands. It's triple the numbers that he inherited from the last Labour government. So that puts it in context how much things have gone up. But I think there's a dishonesty in the line that the government took in the last couple of days, because they say this isn't an acceptable figure, it's too high, we must get it down. Well, I don't think it's an accident that you had these numbers. Business leaders and groups that represent, economic forecasters have consistently said that we have areas of the economy like lorry drivers, like healthcare workers, social care, where we don't have enough staff to do those jobs, and that they're going to struggle to function without immigrant labour. And so I think it's an intentional strategy that they brought these people in. And I also would say that's a pretty good defence that you know, you might not like the immigration numbers, but I'd rather that than see my nan not be able to looked after or have a pub not be able to open at the weekends because it doesn't have any bar staff.
OK, so there's about 5,000 doctors every year that leave the UK and go and work abroad, so we should be focusing on retention there, particularly because the quality of care of a UK doctor is far better than someone trained up in Malaysia with very different credentials. So
Malaysia's a very highly educated country.
OK, I'm...
Just on that point, Connor, are you aware that one of the reasons why the net migration figures are so high this year is because there have been much less emigration from the UK to other countries?
There was about 700,000.
So actually we're seeing more British people stay in this country, and that is one of the reasons why the numbers are so high this year.
I think only 84,000 British people returned from temporary stays overseas. But the point is, it's still going up, and it's not a blip. It's actually just an exponential trend. And you brought forward economic arguments. I mean, of course, there are business leaders that are lobbying the Tory party. 25% of the government's donors are property developers, so of course they have an incentive to keep pressure on the housing market. There are loads of ghost jobs that they keep putting up to keep manufacturing consent for bringing in more people and suppressing native wages. But again, it's not just an economic argument. It's about, do people feel they belong here? And did we ask for this cultural change? No, and it's still happening.
Can I just point out, I mean, at least two of us on this panel, my grandparents came here from Canada. Albie's grandparents came here from, I'm not sure, which country was it?
Ghana.
Ghana. I don't know whether, Lois, you have...
Well, I'm a native Scot, so if you make that to be an issue of migration, that...